All right, so let's move into Chapter 18. Chapter 18 deals with the urinary system. So let's look at our urinary system. So our urinary system is comprised of our kidneys, our ureters, urinary bladder, and urethra. So our kidneys are going to make urine. Urine is going to be transported through the ureter to the urinary bladder and then stored there until it's time for us to release it, and then we release it out through the urethra. So if we look inside of our abdominal pelvic cavity, this is where we see is the back view here. You can see those kidneys are encased within adipose tissue against our back of our abdominal cavity wall. All right, so let's look at kidneys and the functions of kidneys. One is that they are going to regulate the volume, composition, and pH of body fluids. They're going to remove metabolic waste. Those two things are going to produce urine. They also are going to control the rate of red blood cell formation by secreting a hormone known as erythropoietin. Erythropoietin, secreted by the kidneys, goes to our bone marrow and causes more red blood cell formation. Next, it regulates blood pressure by secreting renin. Renin's overall effect there is it increases blood pressure. All right. Next is that it regulates the absorption of calcium ions in the small intestine by activating vitamin D. So vitamin D allows our small intestine to absorb those calcium ions. Let's look at parts of the kidney. All right, so the first part of the kidney is the renal pelvis. So I know this is a little hard to see, but here's our ureter. When our ureter goes into our kidney, it enlarges in that area, and that area is the renal pelvis. So this is a funnel-shaped sac that opens to the ureter. And then off of the ureter, off of the renal pelvis are these smaller tubes called calyces. So a calyx is singular, and they're going to drain urine into the renal pelvis. Next is a renal medulla. So this area right here is a renal medulla. So that is the inner portion of the kidneys, and it contains these structures known as renal pyramids. So each one of these is a renal pyramid. Outside of that is the renal cortex. So all this right here is a renal cortex. All right, it does not contain pyramids. Next is the renal capsule, and that's a protective covering around there. So it's a fibrous membrane that surrounds the kidneys. Next is the renal artery. So there's the renal artery in red. And this is a vessel that supplies blood to the kidney, and it comprises about 25% of our cardiac output. Next is a renal vein. So the renal vein carries blood away from the kidneys. All right, so let's move to something a little bit more microscopic. So this is showing a section through the kidney. Here's the cortex. This is the medulla. This is actually a pyramid within the medulla. And we see this structure here, and this is called a nephron right there. And the nephron is a functional unit of the kidney. So this is how we're going to make urine, and that's primarily what we're going to focus on here. All right. So there's about 1 million nephrons per kidney. All right. So let's take a look at this part. All right. So this is a blow up showing our whole nephron right here. So this part right here is called our renal corpuscle. And our renal corpuscle is made of a glomerulus, which is that structure right there, which is a capillary tuft located within the glomerular capsule. That's where blood filtration occurs. So this is where we're going to filter our blood. Around that is the glomerular capsule, also known as the Bowman's capsule. And this is a thin-walled sac that surrounds the glomerulus, and it's going to capture the filtrate that is produced by that glomerulus. Next, that filtrate is going to move through this tube, this yellow tube, which comes down, up, around, and that's known as the renal tubule. So there's a portion of the nephron that extends from the renal corpuscle here to a collecting duct, which is right over there. There are 3 parts to this. We have the proximal convoluted tubule, which is right there. So convoluted, it's not straight. And then we have the loop of Henle, where it dips down and then back up. And then we have the distal convoluted tubule, which is found over here. And so that distal convoluted tubule connects to the collecting duct. Next are the collecting ducts. So that is a collecting duct right there. And so these are small tubes that are going to transport urine from the nephron to the calyces. So if we go back to this picture, this is showing a collecting duct here, collecting duct there, and they're going to drain urine into a calyx. All right? So that's what all these little dots here are trying to show, are these openings of those collecting ducts. Let's look at blood vessels. First is the afferent arteriole. So this is showing the afferent arteriole. The afferent arteriole is a blood vessel that carries blood to the glomerulus. Next is the efferent arteriole. So this one is the efferent arteriole. And so this is a blood vessel that carries blood to the tubules after the glomerulus. So over here is the tubules. So if we go to this picture here, this is a blow-up of the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule around it. Here's the afferent arteriole, here's the efferent arteriole. All right? And what you notice is that afferent arteriole is larger than the efferent. And so what that does is that increases the blood pressure, or hydrostatic pressure, within the glomerulus. So now we're going to shoot more stuff through there. So, right? So that's going to help us create more filtrate. All right, going back to this picture here, we have all these blood vessels around the tubule, and those are called the peritubular capillaries. So these are blood vessels that surround the renal tubule.